Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and we're going to talk about the monk. Let's talk about Dungeons and Dragons 5e and the monk's unarmed strike. Now, for those of you who are unaware, I am a fan of the monk. So I do enjoy talking about the monk, and if you turn to page 78 of the Player's Handbook, you'll find information on the monk's unarmed strike. I'm going to read out the section. I'm then going to break it down and give you some sort of pointers. I'm going to pull up a map after that and I'm going to show you and demonstrate the process, get out the whiteboard and the black marker and do some number crunching with you, essentially show you exactly how it works. And then at the end of that, I'm going to discuss all of the sage advice stuff that I have compiled for those of you who really need the nitty-gritty, all the little finer points with regard to the monk's unarmed strike. So let's start off with martial arts. Essentially, this is where it all begins. At first level, your practice of martial arts gives you mastery of combat styles that use unarmed strikes. Now, these unarmed strikes can be with your head, your hands, your fists, your feet, your knees, literally any part of your body that might be able to be used as a weapon. So don't think of it just as fists and feet. It can be any part. So that's any combat style, and it also includes monk weapons. So it's not just your unarmed strikes, but monk weapons, which are short swords and any simple melee weapon that you don't have. You need to make sure these weapons aren't two-handed or have the heavy property, because if they are two-handed or have the heavy property, then martial arts doesn't work quite the way you might want it to. You gain the following benefits while you are unarmed and not wielding or wielding only a monk weapon. So we're going to only be focusing on the unarmed side of things, but I'm going to go through it anyway. And you got to make sure you're not wearing armor and you're not wielding a shield. So you can't go, I'm going to punch and have a shield for this to work. So here are the key features to understand. You can use your dexterity instead of your strength for the attack and the damage rolls of your unarmed strikes and monk weapons. So if it's an unarmed strike or a monk weapon, you can use dexterity or strength, which other classes can't do, with your attack rolls and your damage rolls. At level 1, and this changes, but to start off with, you can roll a d4 or 4-sided dice in place of the normal damage of your unarmed strike or monk weapon. Now, normally most classes get to add 1 plus whatever their strength modifier is, and that's it. Or, those sorts of restrictions mean that you really can't do an awful lot of damage with an unarmed strike. But a monk is different. This dice changes as you gain monk levels, as shown on the martial arts column of the monk table. And I'm going to go over that in a second. Now, there is another section that's part of martial arts, which I will talk very briefly about, but I won't go into today because I feel like that's another video. When you use the attack action, so you have to use the attack action with an unarmed strike or a monk weapon on your turn, you can make one unarmed strike as a bonus action. So that does mean that if you are level 1, you can use your action to make an attack, and you can also use your bonus action to make another unarmed strike. So you can punch twice or kick twice or headbutt twice or whatever it is that you want to do. Essentially, it's just to represent the fact that you are using all the parts of your bodies. And then you could describe it as, I use a headbutt and a punch, or an elbow and a kick, however you like. It really doesn't matter. Now, the example they give is, for example, if you take the attack action and attack with a quarterstaff, you can also make an unarmed strike as a bonus action, assuming you haven't already taken a bonus action this turn. So you only get to do the bonus action once, which is pretty straightforward. So now let's open it up and have a look at my little scene here, because I've set up, I took a little bit of time to sort of make sure it was nice and close and easy to follow and understand. And I'm going to go through the basics for our monk and how it works. So the first thing I want to say is, when you build your character and you have a look at your character sheet, you're going to find there's a couple of things you need to understand, and that is, if your strength modifier or strength score, it doesn't matter whether it's the score or the modifier, because if your strength score is quite low, it probably means that your modifier is quite low. If your dexterity score or modifier is higher than your strength, then it is smarter to use your dexterity modifier, which means building a monk around dexterity is usually a better idea than building it around strength, because you don't have to spread around your points, or particularly if you're not rolling dice and you're building your character with the standard array or the point buy system. So I would suggest, remember, you get to use either dexterity or strength, so go with the one that has the highest modifier. In this case, for this particular example, this monk that is facing off against a brown bear has a strength score of 14, which means the modifier is +2, and a dexterity score of 16 with a modifier of +3. And what we do when we make our attack roll is we're going to take that modifier and add it to our proficiency bonus. And we're only going to deal with a level 1 monk. I think that's the easiest way to deal with things right now. So your proficiency bonus at level 1 is only 2. So if we go dexterity modifier of 3, and then we add 2, we're going to get 5. It's pretty simple. That's not too hard. That's easy enough. So that 5 is what we add to our attack roll. And as I said, we are going to use our dexterity modifier for doing our attack. We'll use our dexterity because that's the highest thing. So grab your 20-sided dice, roll that dice. I rolled a 14, and then I add 14 to my attack modifier, which is 5. So 14 plus 5 equals 19. Okay, 19. There it is. Now 19 is equal to or greater than the armor class of our bear. The bear or brown bear only has an armor class of 11 and a range of hit points. It doesn't really matter, but the point is you've hit your target. Now, as I said before, if you make an attack with your action, you can follow up with your bonus action, which I'm not going to do right this very second. Instead, we're going to roll our damage. Now, as I said before, we're going to use a 4-sided dice. That's a D4 for our damage. So what are we going to add to that? We're going to add our dexterity modifier. We're using dexterity for the attack roll. We need to use our dexterity modifier for the damage. So that is a +3. So take your 4-sided dice, roll that. I rolled a 2, and I add 3 to that. So 2 plus 3 equals 5. And that is our damage. And so the first strike on the bear, when you get close enough that is going to cause 5 bludgeoning, because usually when you're doing an unarmed strike, it's bludgeoning damage. Okay, so now that that's covered, what if I wanted to do another attack, which I can do if I want. Particularly, it's level 1, it doesn't matter. Now, other classes can't use their bonus action to make an unarmed strike, but the monk can. So this is where things get a little bit more interesting, because it actually stipulates as part of martial arts. So I'm going to grab our dice and we'll make another attack. Now you can do so, as I said, when you do this, you need to roll your 20-sided dice. We're going to add 5 to that. So I rolled a 19. So 19 plus our 5 for our attack modifier. Okay, and that's going to come to 24. All right, so there's that. Now 24 is more than enough to be equal to or greater than the armor class of the bear, which has only got 11, so it hits. So let's roll some damage, just as we did before. And we roll our 4-sided dice. We're going to add 3 to that. So I rolled a 4 on the dice. So 4 plus 3 is going to equal a grand total of 7. So 7 damage. And that's the second attack done with your bonus action. And that's really how your unarmed strike works. So what happens as I level up with my monk? Because the damage dice that you get to use for unarmed strikes changes, right? So when you're level 1, you're going to get like just a 4-sided dice. But as you go up and you get to level 5 monk, you get to use the 6-sided dice instead. And when you get to level 11 as a monk, you get to use the 8-sided dice. Remember, it's not character levels, it's monk levels. And when you get to level 17, you get to pull out the big mother, which is the 10-sided dice, the D10. So it means that your attacks get more powerful as you increase in levels. Really, really helpful. I certainly think that is a great feature of the monk, because it does sort of level up the damage that you do. And not only that, as you go up in levels, you will also get the opportunity to make vastly more than just 2 attacks. One is your action and one is your bonus action. That's because of a feature of extra attack that the monk will pick up, and on top of that, you can also use your flurry of blows, which I won't cover today because that's a bit more complicated. So let's go and start chatting just really quickly about some of the information regarding sage advice and what you might be able to sort of expect from that. I spent, I wouldn't say a huge amount of time, but I spent enough time to sort of make it clear that there were a couple of questions that people were asking. So this is all taken from Jeremy Crawford. So I haven't taken it from Mike Merles, it's all Jeremy Crawford. So here are the couple of questions that I'll answer. A beast's natural weapons don't count as unarmed strikes. That's like the bite or the claw from the bear. They're not actually considered unarmed strikes. They are just considered natural weapons. Does that make sense? I know a lot of people get confused because they might want to sort of mix their wild shape with the druid, along with, say, picking up the monk and, you know, multi-classing into monk and druid. This is often why that particular question is asked. What about the monk's unarmed strike? It doesn't count as a finesse weapon. Even though you get to choose whether you use dexterity or you use strength for your attacks and your damage, your monk's unarmed strike still doesn't count as a finesse weapon, even though you are using dexterity or strength for your unarmed strikes, depending on which you pick up. The monk's unarmed strike is not, it's a weapon attack, but it's not counted as a weapon as you would use, say, like a sword or an axe. The monk's unarmed strike can't be used with the rogue's sneak attack. Now the reason being is because to use sneak attack, you must have a weapon. And when I say a weapon, it needs to be something that is suitable for being classified as a finesse weapon. And as I just said, unarmed strikes don't classify as being a finesse weapon. It needs to be a finesse weapon to be able to use something like the monk's unarmed strike. Can't be used with sneak attack, the rogue's sneak attack. So if you're going to multi-class into monk and rogue and you thought you could do that, unfortunately not. The monk's unarmed strike can't be used to divine smite. The monk's unarmed strike can be used for divine smite with the paladin class. So if you go monk and paladin and you've got divine smite accessible and you want to use your monk's unarmed strike to make an attack and then try to use your smites as well, you can. So that's definitely an option. A monk's unarmed strike can't be used with the spell Hunter's Mark. So if you decide to multi-class again and you want to use your unarmed strike and use Hunter's Mark, the spell in conjunction with that, unfortunately you can't. It's just sort of how it's worded. So a lot of the rules are, there's a lot of general rules and there's very specific rules, and this is why it has that sort of restriction. So that's all I have to say on the monk's unarmed strike, and hopefully I've covered all the areas that people wanted me to answer. Hopefully I've made it really clear, and if I had, please share and like the video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos, which I do quite often. If you want to support my channel, you did so by watching this video. I have hundreds more, plenty on the monk and other classes for players and for dungeon masters. And look, I don't do Patreon, but I do have an affiliate link to the book depository and Amazon where you can buy stuff online. I get a small commission. You pay exactly the same price. That helps support me as well, doing more videos. There is a video on the monk called, it's a combat tutorial. You can see the live version. You can see the edited down version. It's really up to you. Now, this is your opportunity to ask questions. Is there something that wasn't clear? Have you got something you would like to add? Do you feel that I got something wrong? Would you like to just say hi? That's all possible in the live chat right now. But if you're not part of the live chat, fortunately, we have a comment section. Just leave it down in the comment section. And that's it. Hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.